Hi, I'm Richard McPherson. I'm the Chief Instructor at Let's Ride Motorcycle Training, and in this lesson we're going to be covering the pre-road ride safety talk. So, you finished your off-road exercises. We now move on to the pre-road ride safety talk. So we're just going to talk about how we survive out there, basically. So we're just going to run through various topics throughout this talk, and hopefully that will help you in getting yourself to be a safer rider out there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the highway code. So what is the highway code? Well, it's kind of like the road user's Bible. We all have to abide by the rules of the road, and this little book, or even though it's more of an online thing these days, will show you all the different laws that you have to abide to when you are riding on the road. Now, do you have to know it? Well, not legally. It's not a legal requirement to know the highway code, but you've got to know the rules of the road. If you ever get prosecuted by the police because you've broken one of those laws, they will always refer to the highway code in the court of law, and not knowing it is no defence. So really it's like playing a ball game without the rules if you don't know it. And not to mention it's incredibly dangerous if you don't know what all the signs mean, the road markings mean, different priorities, all that kind of thing. So if you've not had a chance to read the highway code yet, please do so. You can pick them up online. In fact, I think the entire thing is published on the government website now, free of charge. So there really is no excuse not to go through it. So have a look online, or get yourself a highway code, the actual physical copy. Remember those when we used to have books. But go through it. It will help no end in your road safety. Let's talk about defensive riding. What is defensive riding? Well, the way I like to think of it is they're all out to kill us. Okay, so you've got to ride as if you're not seen. A rather sad statistic with motorcycling is the majority of accidents involving motorbikes are actually caused by other road users, and with the classic one being a junction when a car is waiting to pull out, doesn't look properly, pulls straight out in front of the motorcyclist, game over. So defensive riding is about identifying zones of danger well in advance. So it's not about looking straight down in front of you when you're riding, it's getting your head up, looking all the way down the road, and not just the road, but scanning the sides of the roads as well, not to mention using your mirrors. It's building up a picture of what's happening around you. And remember, anything which moves is a potential hazard to you. So we've got to look at the situation, assess it, decide what we need to be doing. So what's a hazard? Well, anything could be a hazard. It could be the number one being a car waiting to pull out a junction. It could be a cyclist. It could be a child at the side of the road, maybe running out, anything like that. So you've got to identify these zones of danger well in advance. And as I say, assume everyone is out to kill us. I mean, they're not actually out to kill us. It does feel like that sometimes. But if you can think for other people, so let's say we're coming down the road, we see a car waiting to pull out of a junction, we should be thinking they're going to pull out on me. So what can we do to mitigate that risk? Road positioning is very good. We can move out if that's going to help them to see better. We should be covering the brakes, ready to stop. We can maybe utilise the horn. If someone's not looking at you at a junction, maybe they're looking the other way. Perhaps they've already looked your way. Now they're looking the other way, at which point you have now appeared. And quite a lot of people only do a right-left check and pull out. So if someone's looking to the left and not at me, guess what I'm going to do? A couple of beeps of the horn. Just wake them up to what you're doing. So that is what defensive riding is. It's all sorts of things when you're riding. What other little tips we can use? For example, if we're overtaking a parked bus or just pulled up on the side of the road dropping people off, what could we expect as we emerge around the other side? Well, we could get someone walking out, couldn't we? What about if we're riding past parked cars? There could be someone who walks out between them, that kind of thing. So it's all about what you can see and what you can't see, for that matter. If you're coming up to a blind corner, there could well be a parked car just around it that you haven't seen. So just back off a little bit on things like that. It can also be about what you can reasonably expect to happen. And as I say, you just anticipate the actions of other road users, or not just the road users, it can be pedestrians and cyclists as well. It can be very erratic behaviour. So you've got to think for other people as well as yourself. And if you can do that, you will have many, many happy years of safe riding. So always ride defensively, never aggressively. So rear observation. So what is rear observation? Well, if you watch the video about observations, you'll know that there's 3 checks that we do. So having effective observation is very, very important as motorcyclists. So the mirror check should be a regular thing, every sort of 15 to 20 seconds when it's safe to take your eyes off the road. Remember, most of the danger is up ahead, but some can come from behind as well. So every 15 to 20 seconds, try and update your mirrors. Using appropriate lifesavers, so any big move out to the right, any turn to the right from a main road to a side road, changing lanes, so if you go from left to right, right to left, and on roundabouts if you need to cross a lane to exit the roundabout. So plenty of places for the lifesavers. And finally, the direct observation, usually reserved for when we're pulling away from the side of the road. We have a real good look behind before we pull away. So mirrors are very good, but do remember they don't give you the full picture. And not to mention they're very difficult for judging speed and distance because of magnification of the glass. So we can't always trust them to give us an accurate picture of what's happening behind. So this is where we have the lifesavers and the rear observations. Not to mention, if you're doing an observation, let's say I'm just about to overtake a car on a dual carriageway, the fact that I do that shoulder check really shows the car behind that I'm going to be pulling out. Now, I will have my indicator on, but that physical movement does alert cars to what you're doing. So observation is very important for riding safely on the road. Road positioning. So road positioning is pretty critical for riding bikes on the road. So most of the time we're going to be riding in the centre of the lane. That's what we refer to as the command position. So because you're commanding your side of the road. You're not riding too close to the curb, which is very much a push bike thing. And the danger there is there's lots of rubbish at the side of the road, but it could be people stepping out in front of you. But we're also not riding too close to the centre of the road, where oncoming traffic gets a little bit more hazardous to you, particularly if they start drifting into your lane. So most of the time, we're going to be using the centre of the lane. And you'll hear that referred to as the command position by your instructor. But feel free to vary that. That's only a guide. Remember, everything you're taught today is just hints and tips to ride safely. It's not the law, what we're telling you. Centre of the lane most of the time, but feel free to move that. If moving out is going to help you see around a corner a little bit better, or let's say you've got a car waiting to pull out of the driveway of their house, and let's say there's a bush there or a wall which is obstructing the driver's view of you as the motorcyclist, what could we do? We can move the bike out so that driver can see us a lot easier and a lot earlier, which is the important thing. Likewise, we can bring the bike into the left. Let's say we've got a bus coming the other way, overtaking parked cars on that side of the road. Now that bus has entered into our lane partially, so it's not safe for us to be in the command position anymore. So we bring the bike to the left. So use your common sense a little bit. Moving out, moving in, not a problem. This is the beauty with motorcycles. We can move all over the place. Now, hopefully you pay your road tax. You're on the road. You can use as much of it as you want. So feel free to move. So centre of the lane most of the time, but certainly you'll see the instructor moving around behind you if you look in your mirrors on the road ride this afternoon. So road positioning is very, very important. It really does help better your vision down the road as well as get people to see you more easily. The 2-second rule. Well, only a fool breaks the 2-second rule. I'm not sure if you've heard that phrase or not, but it's a good little phrase that we use to gauge the distance between us and the vehicle in front. Now, what we say normally is, on a nice dry day, we want to keep about a 2-second gap between us and the vehicles in front. Now, why 2 seconds? Well, 2 seconds gives us enough time to react if that vehicle decides to anchor their brakes on and get onto our brakes and use them safely without panicking and slamming on the brakes with all sorts of nastiness which comes along with that. So how do we gauge 2 seconds? Well, only a fool breaks the 2-second rule. Takes around about 2 seconds to say. So you can see where I'm going with this now, can't you? So let's take a landmark, so like a tree or a lamppost at the side of the road. Now, when the vehicle in front of you goes past that landmark, you say, only a fool breaks the 2-second rule. Now, if you can say that in its entirety, by the time you get to that lamppost, great. That means you've got a nice, healthy distance between you and the vehicle in front. If you can't say it by the time you get there, you're too close. You just need to back off a little bit. So that's in the dry. Now in the wet, we don't have the same traction levels as the dry, so we need to increase that distance. And a real safe one to go with that is 4 seconds. So we can say only a fool breaks the 2 second rule twice there. So just increase that stopping distances. Now, what I mentioned in the braking video is you'll be amazed how quickly you can stop in the wet, nearly as quickly as the dry. But the difference is what you do with the brakes. Because don't forget, in a real emergency, your instinct is to slam that front brake on as hard as you can. Now, you'll probably get away with that in the dry, but in the wet, you won't. So that extra time is more about thinking and reacting correctly with the squeeze of the brake rather than panicking and slamming on the brake. So don't forget that 2 second rule. Now, when you come to a stop behind traffic, how far should we be away from the vehicles then? Well, if it's a car, I would suggest about a car length. We don't want to go much closer than that, simply because if they roll backwards, they can take your front wheel out. It's also quite intimidating to the vehicle in front if you're right on their backside. And also, albeit quite a rare scenario, if that car breaks down for any reason, we need to be able to negotiate around the outside of them safely. When you're behind the bigger vehicles, when we're moving as well, the 2 second gap often isn't enough. We need to make sure that driver can see us in the mirrors. So if you're behind a big lorry, they've got huge blind spots. So you want to back it off even more, maybe move out to the right a little bit so at least you're in the driver's mirror there. So only a fool breaks the 2 second rule. Weather conditions. Well, we as motorcyclists are very vulnerable to weather. Rain, sleet, snow, ice, all make the roads slippery. I mean, rain isn't too much of a problem. We just need to worry about the slippery things like drain covers, anything metal on the road. Could be like railway tracks if you're crossing a railway line, that kind of thing. And we just need to increase our stopping distance a little bit and take it a little bit easier in the corners. When it comes to sleet, snow, ice, honestly, put the bike in your garage and take other means of transport. It's just too dangerous. The roads become so slippery, it's so easy to lose the control of the bike very quickly. So I would definitely recommend not using a motorcycle in those conditions, but rain's not an issue. Another condition could be sunny days, yeah? Really, Richard? Why would sun be a problem? Well, sun low in the sky can be very dazzling, and it makes it very difficult for you to see what's happening in front of you. So this is where tinted visors are very useful, or even a pair of sunglasses. But do remember, if you do wear sunglasses, make sure your visor is covering them because they're not very strong. So if your visor is up and you're wearing sunglasses, if a stone hits those sunglasses, they're not strong, you can guess what's going to happen. They're just going to shatter and all sorts of nastiness occurs. So if you do wear sunglasses, just make sure your visor is covering them so they don't get hit by a stone or something. So this is where the drop-down tinted visors are fantastic. So my helmet's got one, just pull the little lever there and it drops down a dark visor, job done. So just be a little bit careful in low sun. It can be very dazzling. So also the thing with weather is temperatures. So if you're too hot or too cold, it affects concentration levels because you're uncomfortable, particularly when you're too cold. It's nasty. So if you're in freezing temperatures, don't forget there's a wind chill factor as well. So it might be about 2 or 3 degrees, but it's going to feel a lot colder than that. So this is where wearing appropriate clothing is super important. And you'll really feel it on things like your hands. If you're in freezing temperatures, riding at 50, 60 miles per hour, your hands get so cold to a point where you can barely use them. And that's incredibly dangerous. I'm not kidding when I had a friend many years ago who rode all the way back from London. And then he got back home and he literally fell off the bike. He was so cold. He couldn't open his hands. He had to sort of slide his hands. And then he just fell onto this floor. His dad had to run out of his house to just make sure he was all right. It was incredible. I swear he had hypothermia. But, you know, that's just a case of not wearing the correct clothing and not taking regular breaks. You know, if you're taking long trips in the cold, make regular stops. Keep a flask of hot tea in your backpack or something. You know, keep yourself nice and warm, so don't suffer. High winds can also be very dangerous for motorcycles. I mean, if it's coming straight at you, not a big issue, but side winds in particular can really blow a bike around. I mean, the bigger machines don't tend to be affected quite so much, but the little machines can really be tossed around in high winds. So if it's a really bad gale force wind when you're riding, just consider, do you need to be taking the bike? It can get a little bit dicey, so be careful in high winds. Misty and foggy conditions can also be a bit of an issue. They really decrease the visibility levels. So if you have to ride in mist and fog, be very, very careful. The downside with motorbikes is that we don't have fog lights like cars do. So if a car is racing up behind us, they're not going to see us until the very last second, which can be very dangerous. So again, these are conditions we want to really have a think about whether we should be riding or not. And the other problem with fog is our lights are on all the time, which is fine. But in foggy conditions, if you hit that main beam, so at night time you hit the main beam, it will just bounce off that fog, and it is incredibly dazzling. So be very careful when riding in misty and foggy conditions, particularly in the dark. Always stick with dip beam, don't go to main beam, it can be quite dangerous. And the final thing is, on a nice bright sunny day like this, you've just got to be a little bit careful of shadows. Crazy, huh? Well, that's because if you come out from a bright area into a dark area, it can take a while for your eyesight to adjust to the different light levels. So be a little bit careful. If you go straight into a very dark corner, you've got no idea what's there. Just until your eyes just acclimatise to that sudden drop in light, it can be a little bit hazardous. So be a little bit careful. On a bright sunny day, if you're coming up to a darker area, then you might just want to back off your speed a little bit just in case. And also, darker areas can also disguise dangerous things like ice. So on a really cold winter's day, just because the sun is out, it's still cold. And if you come into a dark area, a shadowed area, then watch out, there could be some ice there which you haven't spotted. So road surface, let's talk about that. Now, having only two wheels, we're a lot more susceptible to things on the road than a car might be. So what things can affect a motorcycle on the road? Well, anything loose. So grit, gravel, mud, these are all loose materials. Leaves in the autumn when they hit the deck can be very, very slippery. So whilst most of our attention is going to be on what's happening ahead of us, we do need to devote some of our attention to the road surface, particularly if we're about to turn. For example, if I'm coming up to a junction, I'm about to do, say, a left or a right turn, so you're tipping the bike in, I'll obviously check that it's nice and clear around me and that I'm safe from other road users, but I'll also have a bit of attention on the road surface. This goes back to when I was 16, when I slammed it into a left-hand corner, didn't see a big patch of gravel, front wheel hit it, woof, down I went, skidding on my backside. Yeah, that was fun. It was a harsh lesson, which I learned very, very well, so learn from me. Always keep an eye on the road surface and avoid debris like that. It doesn't take much for two wheels to lose traction completely and down you go. Thankfully, it's quite a rare scenario to have a lot of loose material on the deck, enough to make you lose control of the bike. You can find it quite a lot on the sort of less used country roads, particularly around farms where the farmer will drag a load of mud onto the road. And what you'll find is cars going down that road will gather that mud up into the centre of your lane, which is normally where we'd ride the bike, isn't it? So, again, it goes back to road positioning. If you're seeing debris on the road, build up with grit, gravel, mud in the centre, then keep to either side of it. I would always tend to avoid the left side, because the right side of any grit or gravel in the middle will put you a bit close to any oncoming traffic there. Now, a problem we have in this country is potholes. I'm always moaning at the council to repair them. Car drivers don't generally care because it doesn't really affect a car that much, but a bike, particularly a little one like a little scooter, can be really affected by potholes. So be very careful. Again, this all goes back to having a little bit of attention on that road surface. Avoid the potholes if you can. The bigger ones can really be a problem for, not so much the bigger motorcycles, they can tend to absorb that quite easily, but these little scooters that we use, those tiny little wheels can get sucked into those potholes quite easily. And whilst it's unusual to lose control over the bike, it's going to give a big thump, so you should be a little bit careful because that can damage your tyres. So what other things on the road surface could we look out for? Well, again, thankfully quite a rare scenario, but oil spills, diesel spills, petrol spills. So oil spills, thankfully a lot rarer these days as the maintenance of vehicles has improved and the general construction of vehicles has improved. Oil patches used to be a big problem back when I was a lad. Buses used to shed oil, lorries used to shed oil and diesel. It wasn't good. So we've got to be careful on the high risk areas. So roundabouts can be a high risk area. So if you've got a lorry who's who just filled up their tank full of diesel, hasn't quite secured that fuel cap properly. They go around the corner and it all starts pouring out. And you can see it and you can smell it. It's horrible stuff. It's like sheet ice if you hit it. Very dangerous. But as I say, you can usually smell it as you approach. It stinks. But you'll see like a rainbow strip on the roundabout, so avoid that. It really can be very, very dangerous. And also be careful around things like bus stops. If there is a leak of oil, again, it's very unusual now, but if there is a leak of oil, that's where they tend to build up there. And petrol stations can be a problem as well, where people have pulled out the fuel nozzle and it's still leaking petrol. So petrol can be very, very slippery too. So when you go into your petrol station, just be a little bit careful. Look at the road surface as you're entering into the petrol station, when you're pulling up next to the pump mainly, and looking out for any dark patches. They can be very, very slippery. So be careful when you put your foot down. You don't want it slipping like that because you'll be off. So watch out for it there. Road markings can be quite slippery as well. So the paint on the road can be a bit slippery. Not so much in the dry, but in the wet, they can be a little bit slippery. So just be a little bit careful riding over any painted lines. So, you know, you've got your giveaway lines, which you can't really avoid. You've got your zigzag lines, chevrons, all these kinds of things. Can get quite slippery in the wet, so do avoid those if possible. It's not too bad in a straight line. It shouldn't affect the bike at all, but in the corners, if you do hit one of these painted lines and it's wet, the bike can get a little bit squirrely over them. Also be suspicious of anything which is shiny on the road. It's usually things like water, but the tar banding, you've probably seen it where a utility company has come along and dug up a trench to lay some cables. They filled it up and put this banding, this black banding around the outside of it. Now again, in the dry it's not a big issue, but in the wet they're super slippery. So again, things to avoid if you're in a corner there. And don't forget the metal things that we talked about earlier, which is the drain covers, manhole covers, train tracks. If you're in a city where there's tram lines, they can be very slippery when they're wet as well. Not to mention tram lines, if you get your wheels stuck in them, you're following the tram, okay? So just be a little bit careful with things like tram lines. Conspicuity. What does conspicuity mean? Well, conspicuity means being conspicuous, meaning getting yourself seen. So I've already talked about the issues that we have as motorcyclists on the road with people not seeing us. So what can we do to get ourselves seen? Well, there's various different techniques we can use to do that. So straight off the bat, you'll see that we all wear high-vis vests. So that certainly helps. That's a great way of attracting attention to yourself, particularly with the peripheral vision of drivers. Peripheral vision is very good at picking up bright colours. So this is why we wear the high-vis vests, and well worth having, or even just brightly coloured clothing will definitely help there. So the high-vis is great for the daytime use, but not so good at nighttime. Makes no difference at all. So we can also have reflective material. So you'll see this on a lot of motorcycle clothing, where they have stripes, pinstripes in the arms or on the legs, on the trousers there. Little patches of Scotch light, which is great for showing up at night time when car lights are bouncing off them. Having your headlights on is another great way of getting yourself seen. Now, actually, most modern bikes, there isn't an option to turn them off, but even if you do, I would definitely suggest leaving them on all the time. The only downside with having the headlights on is if you hit a pothole. So if you're riding down the road and you hit a pothole or a big bump in the road, it could look like you're flashing your headlight. So be careful. If you've got a car waiting to pull out of a junction and you hit a pothole, think, ooh, are they going to think I'm letting them out? Now, I know the highway code states that a flashing light means warning, but everyone in this country uses it as if you're letting them out. Okay, so just be a little bit careful. If you're going down the road, you hit a bump, it could look like your headlight is flashing. So be careful if you've got any cars waiting to pull out of a side road. Be ready on those brakes. Correct signalling is good. Flashing lights are very good at attracting attention, so don't forget those indicators. They're very useful not only to tell people where you're going, but to attract attention to yourself. So correct signalling is very important. Simple things like keeping the bike clean. They've got lots of shiny bits. So you keep your reflectors clean, your lights clean, chrome is all very, very shiny. This is all good stuff for getting yourself seen. So keep the bike clean. So every week go out there and give it a really good clean and polish. Positioning in the road is a super important one. I've already talked about it a little bit earlier, but positioning is probably the best way of attracting attention to yourself. So as I say, move out or move in if that's going to help people see you better. So road positioning is super important. So legal requirements. What are the legal requirements for riding a bike on the road? So you must have a driving license. Your bike must be insured. It needs to have road tax. It needs to have an MOT if it's over 3 years old. You need to be wearing a minimum of a ECE or British Standard helmet. Those are the legal requirements for riding on the road. Okay, vulnerability. Why are motorcyclists so vulnerable? One of the most vulnerable road users, actually. And it's pretty obvious why. You know, there's no cage around us. We've got no impact protection. Don't have the luxury of airbags. All we've got to protect ourselves are the clothes and the helmet that we wear, which is only really good for saving your skin, not much else. So we are incredibly vulnerable as road users. We're also smaller. We're very narrow in size, and that could be a real benefit a lot of the time, particularly if you're winding your way through traffic, but it also means you can't be seen as easily. So remember, most road users are programmed to look for cars, lorries, vans. Motorcyclists only account for 1% of the population on the road. So people don't look for us. They're not anticipating a motorbike to be there. And the fact we're so much smaller is a real problem in that regard. So this is why having all those high vis-A's that we had, the methods of increasing our visibility to other road users is all super important, because we're not seen as easily as other road users. So motorcycles have a natural instability. A car's got 4 big fat tyres, super stable. You know, you can just sit in the car and that's fine. If I sit on a bike and lift my legs up, doof, I'm going to hit the floor. Motorcycles are naturally unstable. Now, the good news is, the faster you go, the more stable the bikes become. The wheels act like big gyroscopes, and the faster those wheels spin, the more stability you get from the bike. But at low speeds, a lot of that balance is down to you, certainly sub 10 mile per hour. So we're not nearly as stable as cars or other road users. That can be a particular problem for when we're hitting slippery objects on the road. So we've already talked about the road conditions. Because if a car hits a slippery patch, it might get a little bit of a shimmy going on, but it usually recovers straight away and off they go. With a bike, if it's quite a substantial loss of traction, like maybe a big like a diesel spill or say a big patch of gravel on the road, the whole thing can just slide, and if it's too much of a slide, the bike can go down. Now this is an incredibly rare scenario, I've got to say. Usually if a bike hits something quite slippery, let's say you've gone around a corner, there's a drain cover and you've hit it, what will tend to happen is the bike will just step out, but as soon as it hits the concrete again, we're back in action. Okay, it's a little bit scary, but it's very unusual to lose a bike completely. Very unusual. I'm trying to think the last time it happened to me. I actually can't think of the last time where I've actually lost control of a motorcycle completely down to something on the road. And when it did, it was when I was very inexperienced, and that was just a load of gravel. So it's been a long, long time for me, and actually I can't think of anyone who has lost control of a bike that badly because they've hit something on the road. So it's an incredibly rare scenario, but the bikes can get a bit out of shape, so just keep an eye out. And also the other thing we're vulnerable to is weather conditions. So I've already talked about that earlier, but because we're absolutely exposed to the elements, correct clothing is super important. A nice little phrase I learned over the years is there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad choice of clothes. Okay, so always dress appropriately for the weather conditions. So if it's a really hot day, so make sure you got all your lining out of your protective clothing. Open your air vents, like I've got on my trousers here. I'm just going to open those up. I've got some on my arms as well. Open those up. Open the vents in my visor, and I wear nice, cool summer gloves. So wear appropriate clothing. And likewise in the winter, all the lining will be back in, all the air vents will be done up. I'll probably have an extra few layers. I'll have some base layers underneath on my legs and on my top half of my body as well. I'll have the base layers, and I have like thermal lining for my gloves, the big thick winter gloves as well. And I even go as far as having heated grips on the handlebars. And some bikes even have heated seats these days. How luxurious is that? Now you can reduce your risk of injury by careful choice of clothing. So not only does it reduce your risk of injury, but it can be brightly coloured, which helps you get seen more easily, and it protects you from the elements, from the cold and from the heat too, depending on what time of year that you're riding. So speed, let's talk about speed. So there is such thing as going too slow. If you are in a 30 zone, you're trundling along at 15 miles an hour, then you become a hazard yourself. You start building up the traffic behind you. People get annoyed, try and do silly things to overtake you. If you go too fast, it can be very, very dangerous, particularly around built-up areas. If a car pulls out, there's no way you're going to be able to react and stop in time. So speed limits are there for a reason. They are not a target. All right? So even though it says 30, you don't have to do 30. Sometimes it isn't safe to do 30. Let's say it's a quiet little back road with lots of parked cars everywhere. Let's drop that speed down to 20. But if it is safe to do the speed limit, you should be doing it, keeping up with the traffic flow. It's safer that way. Likewise, exceeding the speed limit is not only illegal, it can be extraordinarily dangerous. It reduces your ability to absorb the information around you. This is the real problem with excess speed. You just can't take it all in. Not to mention, the more speed you have, the more energy you have. And if something bad does happen, that energy has got to go somewhere. So if you come off a bike at 80, 90 miles per hour, where's that energy going to go? If you hit something, well, I'll let you use your imagination on that. So there's some things we can think about when it comes to speed. Firstly, can you stop in time? So have you got enough time to stop in the distance that you can see? So think about that. If you're doing 30 miles per hour around a real sharp left-hander, and suddenly there's a car parked there, have you got enough time to stop? Maybe not, in which case back off the speed. So pick appropriate speeds for the conditions that you're travelling in. What you can see, weather conditions. So if it's pouring with rain, should you be doing 70 miles per hour on a dual carriageway, or would it be better just to back that off a little bit? Aggressive attitudes. Big problem on the roads in this country is road rage. People get angry for the slightest of things. So be careful. Riding aggressively is never a clever plan. You're just not focusing, you're not concentrating properly, and you can put yourself in a lot of danger. So if you are in a bad mood, feeling a little bit aggressive, then leave the bike at home. It is a recipe for disaster. Likewise, don't get into altercations with other motorists. Something might have happened to rile up another car driver. Car versus bike, you are never going to win that fight. If you've got some maniac, all they've got to do is just nudge you with their car and you're off. So it's just not worth it. So if something does happen on the road out there and you get someone doing this with their fists and shouting and screaming at you, don't rise to it. Just take a deep breath, let them be on their way, and just leave them alone. Leave them alone. Don't ride aggressively on a motorcycle. It's just not worth it. Okay, hazard perception. What is hazard perception? Well, I've kind of talked about it already. It really is our ability to identify these zones of danger well in advance. Looking ahead, assessing the situation, deciding what needs to be done. So it's about scanning. I talked about it earlier, not just being a blinkered racehorse looking down the road, but scanning the sides of the roads as well for any potential dangers. It's using that safe separation distance, that 2-second gap, maybe 4 seconds in poorer road conditions, keeping your distance from the vehicles in front when you're stationary in a queue of traffic, so at least a car length, maybe more with the bigger lorries. Using an appropriate speed for the conditions that you're travelling in, which I've talked about already. So remember, the speed limit isn't a target. If it's not safe to do the speed limit, drop it down. It's about planning well ahead. So it's all about keeping your head up, looking all the way down the road, trying to spot any problems. Oh, there's a car on that junction over there. Could they pull out? Oh, there's a cyclist on the pavement. Are they going to jump out onto the road? Oh, there's a kid over there with a football. Is he going to kick it out onto the road? And is he going to run out after it? These kinds of things. So you've got to anticipate the actions of other people around you. And if you can do that, always assume the worst, then you'll be fine. Okay, drink, drugs, and being ill. Drinking and riding. Good idea? No. What is the legal minimum? I actually don't know anymore because I don't drink at all, and I never ever would even consider it if I'm going to be riding a bike. So just don't do it. By all means, look up the legal minimum for alcohol, but don't do it. Any alcohol is going to affect your ability to concentrate, and don't forget, it can affect you for many, many hours after you finish drinking. So if you had a pretty heavy night out, the next morning you can still be well over the limit, so be super careful. It can take hours to get out of your system. So drinking and riding it is not a good thing. Drugs, okay, so drugs, we've got legal drugs. So if you're on any kind of medication, just check with your doctor, check the label. Is it going to affect your ability to concentrate? So check it all out. Am I going to get drowsy using this? if you are, don't ride a motorcycle. So just be careful if you're on medication. Is it going to affect your ability to ride? And illegal drugs, well, what can I say about that? Nothing much. Just don't touch the stuff, and particularly don't touch the stuff if you're going to be riding a motorcycle. Okay, so illness, that can affect us too, can't it? You know, if we've got a stinking cold, so our eyes are running, our nose is running, we're sneezing, you know, we feel awful, we're not running on all 4 cylinders, are we? Therefore, the concentration levels aren't there. So again, consider, do you want to be riding a motorcycle if you're feeling really poorly? So on the topic of concentration, what else can affect our concentration levels? Well, quite a few things actually, if you think about it. So feeling tired is a good one, isn't it? If you've been on a long ride, cross country, it can really take it out of you mentally. You can get tired very, very quickly, and then your concentration goes right out the window. If you get too tired, I'm not kidding, you could literally start falling asleep. So take regular breaks when you're doing long distance riding. Or if you've had a really bad night's sleep, just be careful, the concentration isn't there anymore. Being cold and wet, quite a common one in this country around winter time. There's nothing worse than being soaking wet and freezing cold. It is miserable. It really is miserable. And again, it all goes back to concentration. If my hands are just turned into a couple of ice blocks, if I'm shivering, I'm freezing, I'm not concentrating on riding. This is where appropriate clothing for the conditions that you're riding in is so, so important. And treating yourself to little things like your heated grips or handlebar muffs. And just get a balaclava which goes down and just tucks in between your jacket and your helmet just to stop that freezing cold air going up here. It makes a huge difference. Having base layers, thermal socks are a great one. These are all things to keep yourself nice and toasty on the colder days, because there's nothing worse than being cold and wet when you're riding a bike. Being worried, being worried about something, that can really affect you, can't it? So if there's anything really playing on your mind and that's all you're thinking about, whatever reason that may be, think twice about riding a motorcycle. Okay, so that is it for the pre-road ride safety talk. I hope you found that useful. Your instructor will certainly go over a lot of these points before you go out onto the road on your CBT, but feel free to contact us if you have any more questions on that.